summer of 1995. It was the beginning of the rest of my life. I was a brand new college graduate with a BA in chemistry and sports medicine from St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. The world was my oyster and I was its pearl. All of my friends were busy getting ready for their careers in PR or finance or going off to law school. Some even getting married and starting a new family. I, however, was home and bored stiff because my adventure wasn't starting until later in the fall when I was going off to Lancaster University for a year of medical ethics and creative writing research. Summer of 1995 was also the beginning of the internet and a brand new invention called AOL. With nothing else to do, I sat down, created a profile, and went out and to explore. In very short time, I met a man. An older, wonderful, intelligent man who was interested in advice on how to raise his rambunctious, strong-willed, independent teenage daughter. Perfect. Right up my alley. Not that I had any experience with this, of course. In no time at all, our relationship went from email exchanges and instant message chats every few days to a daily affair. We talked about his family and his life and my life, college, my plans, going to England, my plan to be an athletic trainer and a writer on the side. In August, Brian let it slip that he was a Hollywood director and he was working on a TV show. I had sent him, not knowing this, some of my writing, which he had sent back with comments. And he let me know that he thought I was talented and I had a future. And he suggested, come down to LA, spend some time with me, come to the set, learn about the business, see if you like it. So we planned the trip for September. I would fly down to LA, spend 3 days with him, stay with his family, go to the set every day. I just had to tell my parents. Mom was the picture of calm and collected as I talked about my story, how I met Brian. She asked a few questions, nodding and smiling. Dad, from the word go, was convinced that I had met LA's next serial killing rapist. For the next several weeks, Dad and I discussed, usually at top volume, my plans for my impending trip. I was forbidden to go. A few phone calls between Dad and Brian, and new lines in the sand were drawn. I was permitted to go for a day with lots of caveats. Negotiations about the details for the trip, the one-day trip, began, but they were heated, to say the least. A few days before my trip, Dad made one last phone call to me at the house, and I actually slammed the phone down in his ear. It's the one and only time that I have said to someone, I am done talking to you, and ended something mid-conversation. I left Oakland in the early morning hours when it was still dark and still cold. Mom took me to the airport because I wasn't talking to Dad. Thankfully, the flight to Burbank Airport was short. It was turbulent from beginning to end, so there was no beverage cart, no temptation to add alcohol to my already jittery nerves. There was no time to think about axe murderers, no time to think about money ditches, no time to think that maybe Dad was right. When I landed in Burbank, I really wanted to just throw up and get back on the plane and beg the pilot to take me home. But instead, I sauntered down to baggage arrival, and there I saw two men in black suits with matching sunglasses and the biggest stretch limousine I had ever seen in my life. I couldn't believe Brian had sent a limo from the studio to pick me up, and the tourists were pulling out their cameras, trying to figure out what famous person had arrived. When we got to the set, Brian met me at the door and brought me on and put me in the chair next to his. The entire morning of shooting, extras were coming up to me, asking my opinion on their costumes, on their makeup, on their motivation for the scene. Tom, one of the leads in the show, finally clued me in to look at the back of my chair. On Brian's, it said director in big, bold script. On mine, it said producer in even larger script. After lunch, when we came back for filming, Tony Danza came over to say hi, but more importantly, Danny DeVito stopped by the set to say hi to me. And at our next break, Rhea Perlman came over to speak to me as well. During break in the shooting in the afternoon, we went over to the Party of Five set. And I got to meet Scott Wolf, one of the biggest actors of the day. Brian finally peeled me off the bed so that we could go check out the set where the Wizard of Oz had been filmed. When I arrived at the studio after lunch and we continued to film, the biggest awkward moment of the day occurred as we left to go to dinner. And Tony Danza came over and we walked to the trailer together. As I reached out to shake his hand again and thank him for a great day, I missed the door jamb and tripped and fell and crashed into him. And when our pile finally came to a settle on the ground, I said, "Just call me Grace." At the end of the day, I didn't want to go home and I didn't want to leave. I certainly wanted to stay for 3 days. But at least I got my 15 minutes of fame without ending up in a ditch.